Hello, hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. We are back. We are back for another Authors of Impact Live. Hello, 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 everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for being here, whether you are live or whether you are on the replay. We really appreciate it. So for those of you who may not know me, my name is Robin Devonish. I'm the founder of Pen Published Profit, where we write and publish great books, make money, and impact the world. And so every Wednesday, most Wednesdays, we come here for Authors of Impact Live, where we have great conversations with authors who are using their books and their lives for the greater good. And so we have an awesome conversation that is coming in a moment, that's about to take place as soon as she requests. Hello, 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 everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Wave and let us know that you're here, whether you're live or whether you're on the replay. So make the request. Let's see. So as soon as you make the request to join, yes, here we go. Here we go. Okay. Hey, Michelle.
Hi, Robin.
How are you?
I am doing well. Can you hear me good?
Yes, I can hear you good. I can hear
Okay,
you
good.
good. How are you? You're
I'm
looking,
fine. I'm
I'm,
so
I'm liking
happy
the
to be
haircut.
here. Thank you. I'm getting used to this thing.
Yes. That is awesome. That's awesome. So I'm excited to have this conversation tonight because I believe that is going to help somebody, right?
Mhm.
And that's why we're here. We're here for the purpose to not only showcase authors, but also to help somebody. But
Right.
before we get deep into the conversation, the first question I always ask, who is Michelle Brown?
Mm, mm, mm. Um, Michelle Brown, in this season of my life, I've really discovered how much of a daughter I am to Christ. So I'm a daughter of the Father. I'm a mother, first and foremost. Um, and I'm an author. I'm really trying to walk in this space. So yeah, that's me. Like that's who I am title wise. And I'm still discovering, all aspects of, who I am. I kind of feel like I'm just getting started. I just turned 40 this year. So it really put my focus at a whole different space.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still discovering those pieces, but I have the foundation down, which is I'm a daughter of Christ.
Absolutely, absolutely. A daughter of Christ. I
Hmm.
love it. I love it. So, so before we get to the book, let's talk a little bit about your childhood and your upbringing. What would you say? What type of childhood did you have?
I would say that I had it was fun. It was rough because as well as we get into it, I didn't grow up with my father. Um, I was the youngest of six, so a lot of it was figuring stuff out because my siblings was just way too old. Not old in that sense, but they were older. So I had like, my middle sisters and my older sisters, but it was fun, but it was lonely at times.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember being young and uh, really wanting that father aspect. I really wanted him around. I really wanted to know why he wasn't around. So some of it, was lonely at times, but my mother did the best that she can, like to make sure that I had what I needed. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Especially at a certain age when she was able to get herself established and, get a full-time job and really, come off the system. She really did her best in making sure, how they say, you don't know that you're poor. Like I didn't know that, we was really struggling at times. Um, so yeah, it was fun, but it was lonely at times. I remember being lonely a lot of times and feeling like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, who am I? Trying to figure out like who am I? Like, why, isn't my dad around? Why is situations like this? Like, why is it like this? Why I have to be like this? Asking a lot of questions. And I think that's what led me to start writing, and
Mm-hmm.
keeping like journals and writing poetry, because I was trying to paint. Part of me was painting pictures of my current circumstances with my words. But another part of me was painting pictures of what I wanted my future to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of
Wait
that.
1 second though. But who introduced you to journaling and poetry? Who introduced you? Yeah.
No one. That's the crazy thing. Like, no one. I just
Okay.
started writing, and what I think happened my generation, we had deaf poetry. It was Deaf Poetry Jam or something like that. That Russell
Mm.
Simmons was
Mm-hmm.
starting at the time, so I was
Mm-hmm.
able to put a place to what I was doing. I used to
Mm-hmm.
love watching Deaf Poetry Jam, and I used to see myself, because at first, before Christ saved me, I used to want to be up there doing spoken word. As you know, Lucinda gave me a shot when she did that big her
Mm-hmm.
big conference in New York, and I went up there and did a spoken word. So no one really introduced me to that. I grew up in the 80s, so I had older brothers. My older brother used to rap a lot around the house in the neighborhood. Dudes used to come to the house and they used to rap and be in the hallway, beatboxing, all that. So I grew up in that culture. So you can
Mm-hmm.
kind of say that's where the poetry kind of like had a voice, and because it was in my environment in terms of rap
Mm-hmm.
music.
Mm-hmm.
But most of my journaling and writing came from the moments when I was questioning my existence and questioning what was going on around me, and trying
Mm-hmm.
to write myself out of my circumstances. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of my old work includes of things where I'm like, I'm gonna, be this, or I'm gonna end up here, or just painting pictures of what I wanted my future to be like.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. All right. So you get into this flow of poetry, a way of expressing yourself, expressing your feelings,
Mhm.
because I guess in some ways you kind of felt like you were raised as an only child, right? Kind of in some ways
Yeah, I felt
because
like that
yeah,
sometimes.
because your sisters, your siblings were older, and I definitely can identify with that because I was raised the same way.
Mm-hmm.
My sisters were considerably older than me, and so a lot, they were out of the house and all of that. So I definitely can identify with you with that, and also identify with the whole fact of not knowing that you don't have any money, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have what you needed, that you ate every night, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not realizing that hello, we don't have any money, right? And it's so interesting because I always tell this funny story about when I graduated from high school and my mother wanted me to go to college, right? But I had this whole idea of where I wanted to go to college, and I wanted to go away, right? I wanted to go away to college. And so I remember one day, the thing about TV is, it gives you such an imagination and it makes you think that certain things are like what you see on TV is
Mm-hmm.
what's mirrored in your life. And so I always tell this funny story about how one day I was talking about going to college. And so I was just like, okay, Ma, so I guess it's time for you to withdraw from my trust fund. She was like, what? I was like, I don't have I don't, it's time, I don't have a trust fund. She was like, Robin, what are you talking? She's like, Robin, what do you? I mean, she's like, what are you talking about? She was like, no, if you want to go to college,
Mm-hmm.
um, you're gonna have to go local, and we'll work it out.
Mm-hmm.
But no, you don't. No, sweetie, you don't have a trust fund.
Reality set in,
That's
right?
funny, right? So I mean, and God bless those who have a trust fund. Listen,
Amen.
no shade, nothing like that. But I guess that's when I realized that we didn't have as much as I thought we had. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It is so interesting, but we had love, right? We had
Right.
love. We had
And
love,
now
and
we were able to change that narrative a bit, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it would have changed it.
Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
so you into poetry, you're into writing and all that good stuff. And so that's one part. The other part is kind of, feeling, I guess a sense of loss because your dad wasn't in your life. And so share with the audience a little bit in terms of some of the things that you feel like you had to deal with because your father wasn't around.
Like it, I think it was really difficult for me because he was there up until about 4 or 5. So I
Mm-hmm.
felt that stripping away. You understand?
Okay.
So, although I vaguely remember some of the moments, I
Mm-hmm.
experienced that stripping away. And it's different from growing up where he just was never there. I felt his presence. I remember, him taking me on walks, him putting me on his shoulders, and I talk about some of that in my book, me picking from the trees, like me going down to his job. Like I remembered some of those things. So when
Mm-hmm.
he was gone, I felt that stripping. So a lot of what I had to deal with was I was internalizing the reason for his absence, thinking, was it something that I did? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why would you leave me in that sense? So I was internalizing his absence and kind of like going through that process of not being wanted. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's when rejection was really birthed in me. Like it even though when I was in, my mother's womb, my mother and father was married and stuff like that. But the night that my father, left the house was the moment that rejection set in. And that's
Mm-hmm.
been my battle my entire, a lot of my entire, life is dealing with that sense of rejection, dealing with that sense of, wanting to identify with who you are. Like, I don't think
Mm-hmm.
people realize how much, and we truly, when we're here, we get some of our identity through our parents, right? That's our
Mm-hmm.
mother, that's our
Mm-hmm.
father. We truly kind of try to see ourselves, through them or in them or whatever. So when that's stripped away from you and you trying to figure out who you are because you don't have the knowledge of the word yet. Like me, I wasn't a PK kid. I didn't grow up in church. I didn't have the understanding that when my father forsake me, like the Lord will really raise you up. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know that. I didn't have that language. My only understanding was like, yo, like, why is my father not here? What did I do? Like, why am I rejected? So then a lot of that went through trying to find people, places, and things to fill that void or to take his place when that's not the right way to do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I went through a lot of trying to find, that replacement, um, through, relationships that wasn't good, that was
Mm-hmm.
toxic, through friendships, trying to fix my friends or trying to, help my friends. Like when I was young, like one of my friends, came to live with me, like, because I'm like, no, trying to be that fixer, trying to, help
Mm-hmm.
people, because in some weird way, hindsight, I see my father in them. Like, I wanted to dag at a certain age, like, you want to help your father. Where is he? Like, why is he still on drugs? What can I do? Like, you know what I'm saying? You
Mm-hmm.
start to feel those feelings before they start to turn into anger. I don't think my first emotion that I felt when I was stripped, I don't think the first emotion was anger. I think over the years, I developed anger because as things start to happen to me, I place the blame on him not being there to validate me and to affirm me. It's his fault
Mm-hmm.
I'm with this man, or it's his fault I'm, experience some levels of domestic abuse. It's his fault that, my mother, me and my mother's situation is not, relationship is not what I've had wanted it to be at that time, because she got to be reminded of who you are. Like, so I just placed a lot of blame on him, and then that longing of missing him and wanting him shifted to me being angry. So yeah, it was me internalizing a lot of things. Like I internalized a lot of things and put it on my shoulders as if it was my fault.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow, you said a lot. So rejection led you to try to be a fixer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Rejection led you to, I guess, a lot of confusion, like trying to kind of figure out, what you're doing. It also led to blame, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now that you you once you recognize those things, like how did you pull your, well, no, let's stop, let me go a different direction. Okay, so you realize these things, and I'm guessing at some point you had a come to Jesus moment, or like a aha moment, or a moment where you said, okay, I need to go a different path, I need to heal, so to speak, right? So then what? You come up with the idea, well, listen, I need to heal, but I also need to share. So let me write this book. Like how did it go
Well,
from,
I
you
think
know,
before the come to Jesus moment,
mm-hmm,
he started coming to me, right? I just didn't have the language for, I didn't realize what was happening, because in my poems I would be writing like dear God poems too, right?
uh-huh,
Like not really knowing, just believing in something bigger than me, and writing to God like, dear God, like if I could just get myself out of this situation, or I'm gonna, just different things, just writing to him. So it was poems and letters that I would journal and write to God, right? So he was kind of like pulling me in without me even realizing that I was getting pulled in, right?
mm,
So it wasn't like it hit me and I had to come to Jesus moment. What hit me is that moment that I had to come to my natural father. Like, I really need him right now. Like,
okay. So tell us about that. Talk
yeah.
about
So
that.
that was the moment, Robin, when I was like, when I was graduating. First of all, I was in a domestic violence relationship. One of my first relationships when I was in college, my freshman year in college. I was in a domestic violence relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that shocked me, right? I was like maybe like 19 at the time. And that shocked me. I was like, wait a minute, these are stories that I hear my father did. You know what I'm saying? Like, how did I end up here in this kind of
Wow.
situation, when I know that this was something that my mother experienced through my father, and this is something that I didn't want to be my story, right? So I had a moment like, wow, like, and not only that, the person's well, it was really similar. Like, I was really dating my father in that first relationship.
Wow.
It was really crazy. So then at that point, like throughout that process, remember, I was used to write poems, I used to journal, I used to, do all this. My father was around that time. He wanted to get back in, but I was closed because, one, I think I was ashamed to let him know, like, yo, daddy, this dude put his hands on me. You understand? Like, I'm thinking like, yo, what he's gonna do, because he did it to my mother. Like, so how am I gonna run to somebody that's the same species, kind of thing? So
Mm,
part of me was feeling like, dag. And then as I, when I was graduating, let me go back. When I was graduating high school, um, is when we had the conversation, right? But it wasn't until I got graduated from college that, I felt like, dag, I wanted him like that, right? So the
okay.
conversation that we had when I was 18 was me just wanting to lash out. Like, I wanted to just lash out, you know? I didn't expect that I was gonna actually hear a man's heart. I didn't expect that I was gonna hear my father's heart. So it started to where it's like, okay, let me hear what this man is saying. I didn't want to verbally say, dag, I want my dad around, because I was prideful and I was angry. But let me go and have this conversation so I can lash out at him. But it caught me
Mm-hmm.
by surprise, because he's he was a different man. He was a different man. And I was like, wait a minute, still trying to be tough, still being mean and nasty. But I was like, wait a minute, this man is the real deal. He really want his daughter. He really want his daughter back. He really want to make ends right. So we had that conversation. Fast forward. It wasn't until I was graduating college that I really said, I want my dad. Like, I want
Mm,
him. Like, at that time, I was in another relationship. I was in a relationship with my son's father, and it wasn't the perfect relationship. It still was an unhealthy situation. So I was like, dag, like, I really want my father. Like, I need
mm-hmm.
him. Now it went from, let me just hear him out, to I need him. I need him. I need him,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's when we started to, I let him come to my college graduation. And that's when we started to really build. And
Okay.
and that was in 2004.
Okay. So 2000. So how long? How long? how long did it take for y'all to cultivate the relationship? Did it take, like, once you made the decision that I want my father, did it take long for y'all to get reconnected, or was it kind of like an instantaneous thing?
I would say the first couple of years. So from 2004, 5, and 6, those years was kind of like dragging a little bit, right?
Okay.
Because although I was opening up my heart to my father, and he was trying to do everything that he can, like teach me everything. He was teaching me how to drive. He was teaching me about cars. He was coming to my mom's house and fixing up my room, putting up light bulbs, building stuff. Like, he was just doing everything that he can to show that fatherly presence with me. So the more he was consistent with showing up, around 2007, 8, and 9 is when we start like hitting it off, where it was like us laughing, us going out, us talking, me pulling up on him at his house just to pull up on him. Like, I was really seeing me and my dad. And then I learned, that he was writing the poetry, although we never share our work. That's the crazy thing. We never exchanged our poetry with each other. And my father wrote poetry. Like, in my book, I tell you that when he was away incarcerated, he was
Wait.
writing to
No,
me.
no, no, no,
Oh.
no, no. You jump it. You jump it. Okay, so it's clear that even though nobody taught you about poetry, that spirit of writing, you got that from your father.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was also, it turns out that in your relationship, that he was also a poetry writer as well,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not mistaken, he wrote you letters throughout the years, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But during that time that he wrote you letters throughout the years, uh did did you know that he still, what did you know he was a writer, or you just thought that these were just letters that he was sending to
I thought
you?
he was bugged out. Like, I didn't read the majority of the letters, but when I would skim through them here and there, like, he was writing like stories, like they could have been movies. Like, he was writing screenplay. And I'm like, how his imagination is going to like such a childlike kind of imagination where he would really create a whole. And I was like, yo, he bugged out. Like, he bugged out. Like, what is he writing? So, I didn't. It didn't do anything to me, because to me, I was still judging him. And I was like, you're sending me these stories because you figure I'm a child and you want to entertain me or create these stories, but you're not facing our reality. Like, our
Mm,
reality is you're writing me from Rikers Island, short stories about, you know, cartoonish kind of, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't real. I wanted the real deal. Like, yo, why are you there? Where have you been? What's going on? But he will write me as if it's all good. Like, hey, Shell, how you doing? It'd be June 17th, 1996. I'm like, what? Is he bugging? So my mother, I didn't read them. My mother kept them, though. She never discarded them. She kept
mm,
a lot of them, and I was just like, yo, this man, he not even in tune to what I'm dealing with right now. Like,
okay.
so I never seen him as a writer at that time. I just saw him as a father.
Somebody
That,
that's crazy, that's writing me all this stuff that I don't even want to talk about.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so y'all developed this relationship. While you was in high school, you wasn't trying to hear it, but by the time you graduated from college, you wanted your father, and y'all started to develop this relationship. But eventually, he passes away. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
So how many years were y'all able to get your relationship together before he passed away?
So from like 2004, I would say about 6 years, because I graduated May of 2004. So, about 6 years, 6.5 years, because he passed
Okay.
away December of 2011.
Okay, December of 2011. Okay. And so, of course, that's another, loss.
Mm-hmm.
And also kind of like feeling cheated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, a good part of your life, he wasn't around. And now here y'all are flowing together,
Mm-hmm.
cultivating this relationship. And then, he passes away. So I'm sure I'm
There you
sorry.
go. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm sure you felt a little cheated as well, correct?
I felt
Yeah.
that rejection spirit hit me all over
Wow.
again.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
felt, I felt cheated, I was mature enough to kind of like give thanks for the time that I did have in a
Uh-huh.
way, but it didn't remove the feelings of me feeling abandoned yet again.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So yeah, that was difficult. That was
Okay.
really difficult.
Okay. So let's fast forward a little bit. So you have these poems, and now you have the poems that and the things that you wrote in your mind, and then you have these letters and these poems, these different writings that your father gave to you. And so one day you said, you know what? I'm gonna bring this together and I'm gonna write a book.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So tell us about the book and the purpose of you writing the book.
Mm-hmm. So I had when my father passed away, I had the concept to write the book to pay homage to him, right? That was the initial response. Like, I'm gonna write this book. With my father, he never was able to write it. It's gonna be, but I didn't have the full understanding that it was a major part of my healing. Like, I had to write the book for me to really heal. Whereas initially I wanted to write the book to keep his name alive and to make him a poet or a author in his own right, kind of thing. But as I was going through the grieving and going through the loss, the book became my breaking point. The book became healing for me. And the book shifted. The ideas of how I was going to write this book shifted very different ways many different times, because I didn't know what it meant for me. I didn't know. Like, I had a desire, I would say, to publish my work. I was a writer in my own right of poetry and stuff like that, but I really didn't know the significance and of really birthing this book until it came to me that it was a big part of me healing and being able to let my father go to be fathered by our God, which is, the Lord. Like, that was gonna fill that void, right? Because that void opened up back up again, because I felt abandoned. I felt rejected again. My things wasn't going right, in a relationship that I was in. It was another mirror relationship of my father and his past, life. But that book and reading his poems, it gave me, and even that relationship, that 6 years was so pivotal to my affirmation as a daughter, as a woman. Like, that 6 years was so pivotal. Like, him affirming me, reading his poem that he wrote to me on my birthday, telling me all the things that he wished for me and wanted for me as a father and who I am. So
Mm-hmm.
in that 6 years, like, so much shifted for me. Like, so I received so much from that 6 years that I was able to go into my next. You know what I'm saying? I was able to break forth with just his words. Like, that's the
Yes.
part that's, I still be in awe, because it was his words, right? It was his words. He was showing up, right? But it was me really reading those words on the paper. A lot of those poems was him writing to me. Some of them were short stories, like I said, of him creating, an imaginary or, a fiction story. But a lot of them was him writing his heart to me, him telling me how I was born, how he felt when I was born. So it helped me see, like, although he was on crack, he still, his love for me was still there.
Mm-hmm.
He just was battling this crazy this bad addiction, but
Mm-hmm.
the words, and it's the words
Yeah.
really fed me. It fed me, and it, like, started to close up that wound. And I was able to then be like, nah, I know I know my worth. Like, excuse me, like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't you can't treat me opposite of what my father already affirmed me to be. You know what I'm
That's
saying? Like,
good. That's
it started to
good.
make sense. Like,
Yeah.
no, I know my value, I know my worth. Now, mind you, I caught up to it after his death. You understand what I'm saying? it's not like I immediately left a relationship or I immediately started, you know, I caught up with it after his death. Like, it's like I caught up to his words, you know what I mean?
Yes,
And I was
yes.
able to then be like, I, I, I was validated, I was affirmed, I was loved. You understand what I'm
Through
saying?
those letters.
Come on. I was like,
So, okay. So, first you need to tell what is the title of the book so people can understand what ultimately what you shared thus far. Tell us the title of the book. I know the
um,
title, but everybody else that's watching doesn't.
it's finding my voice through the words of my father. And just so
Okay,
you
so
said title, why I don't have the book right here. But it's
that's okay.
just so you said
Finding my voice through the
through the
words
words
of
of
my
my
father.
father. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. And so the idea at first was to, when you first thought about writing the book, it was to kind of keep his words alive and keep his legacy alive. But
Mm-hmm.
then it turned into, wow, let me marry the two or merge the two, have his letters and have my poetry. So just briefly explain that concept so everybody can understand.
Okay, so once I realized that the book was a healing piece for me, once I realized that God wanted to use this book to birth forth my healing, it began to make sense to respond to those letters, right? It began to make sense to go back to that 5-year-old little girl, go back to that 7-year-old little girl, go back to that 10-year-old little girl, go back to that 14-year-old little girl, and just give the raw emotion, the raw feeling of what I was going through, and respond to him as if I was, at that time. So once I started to do that, right? Because some of my pieces I wrote, very few of them was already written that I was pulling some things from. But a lot of the pieces I wrote in there was as I was writing the book, responding to him and reflecting on who I was at the time that he wrote those letters and where I was. So it kind of like freed me to speak to it, to speak to the pain. Like I spoke to my pain in that book. I spoke to my rejection in that book. I spoke to my feeling of, not growing up. I spoke to all of those raw emotions, in that book. And that's what allowed me to really break free and really have an end to it. And not only that, I was forced to forgive myself in that book, because a part of that process, remember, I said earlier, Robin, that when my father left the first time, I put a lot of blame on me, right? When my father passed away, the same thing began to happen. I blame myself for not forgiving him sooner. So I
Mm.
felt like I wasted years, like, and that was so hard for me to get over that, because I'm like, I wasted so many years that could have been spent, bonding with my dad, because he was clean for a good number of years. He was so clean that he was actually leading groups inside his treatment program. He became
Mm-hmm.
a KSAC counselor. So
Mm-hmm.
he was doing what he had to do, but he was allowing me, he was respecting my space and working through the patients with me. But I felt that blame came back again when I felt like, felt guilty because I didn't forgive him, sooner. So,
Wow.
yeah, so right and getting to that place of that book and merging the two, I merged the two because I had to. I had to. I couldn't shift into where I'm at today if I didn't speak to all that pain and confront it, right? Because I only was able to confront it that one time when I was 18 years old and I had that conversation with him. And I talk about how he acknowledged that pain. He didn't make any excuses. But I didn't really, after that, I didn't really go no further with really, really digging deep and really addressing those moments of what I felt.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't slow it down. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So the book gave me an opportunity to slow it down and address every emotion head on, like address it
Wow.
head on. And
Wow.
that's what made the two. That's why I said I found my voice, right? Because that book allowed me to speak, literally. It allowed me
Yes.
to speak. So that's how I married the two.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. So you have this amazing book, of letters and you answering your father. So let me ask you this. Why do you think is important? Well, I know you think it's important, right? I know you think it's important for you to, as a daughter, that you resolve whatever issues you have with your father. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you talked about, forgiving him. You talked about the relationship that y'all had for, the 6 years, and how y'all really came together. So what I want you to do is I want you to share with those that are watching, why is it so important for you to resolve whatever issues you have with your father as a
Mm-hmm.
woman? Speak to that.
Right. I believe it's important because whether we want to recognize it, our father is the first man that we encounter. He's the first person, first man, and first relationship with the man per se that we encounter. So
Mm,
not resolving those issues, it dictates a lot of your relationships with men, not only men, sometimes with people too, but it dictates a lot of that relationship with your boyfriend or with your husband. It dictates it. And I say that to say, in my situation, right, I didn't have those conversations or have that resolved with my father, yet alone I ended up with men just like him. Like,
mm,
that's not, that don't just happen. It's because it's things and things and unresolved trauma and unforgiveness, all that is buried in us, so we end up with the same type of person that we can't stand or that we have issues with. So I think
mm,
that it's important because it does play a part in your role with a man. And not only that, from my experience, not that I'm a statistics guru or that I did any kind of research in that aspect, although maybe I should, but um the women that I encounter throughout my life, the women that I encounter, a lot of them have daddy issues that then spilled into their relationship, right? Like I was speaking to someone recently, a woman recently, right? And I was hearing her issue, right? Of her saying, she want to be loved and she want to feel loved and she want to feel comforted, right? From a
mm,
man, right?
mm,
And the Holy Spirit was saying to me, and I think it's because of my own personal story of having to go through this, that certain things I just can identify and pick up, father issues or stuff like that because of what I experienced and what God brought me through. So, the Holy Spirit was like, her father was present, but he wasn't present, right?
mm,
So even that alone, some of us have fathers that was present. Maybe they wrote a check, or maybe they dropped off money at the counter, but they wasn't at the birthday, or maybe, you saw them sporadically, but they really wasn't there for you through the hardest moments of your life. You then
mm,
begin to create this perspective, of this is kind of like what men are sometimes. And that relationship that you have, you then begin to, sometimes you take it out on that man, or sometimes you wound up in very bad situations with men. Like you wound up in a domestic violence situations, you wound up in situations where the man is cheating on you and you just would not leave because for the sake of, I want to keep my family together. You end up in marriages that mimic, the bad marriage that your parents went through. Like you end up in these things when you don't resolve them. So I'm a strong believer that you do have to resolve it because that's the first relationship that you have. Now, I will say it can be difficult if your father is deceased. Like that's the reality, right? Because you can't have that conversation.
mm,
But you can still release it in a way to deal with every single emotion, right? Like you could deal to the, and that's why I love, in the book, that concept of, daddy, you hurt me when, daddy, I forgive you for, daddy, I hope this happens, or you still could deal with those, you still can resolve the issues inside so that you can then have healthier relationships, with men, or with your whoever, but for the majority, healthy relationships, with men.
mm, mm. So, so now that that you've gone through this journey, and I'm sure you're still healing, right? Because healing is a process, right? There's certain things that we are healed from, immediately, but then there's some certain things that happen over time, right? So now that you're in this space of awareness, now that you're in this space of, really allowing God to help and navigate you through this and being an author and all of that, are you starting to work with women to help them to deal with the issues that they might have had with their father? Is that a work that you're leaning
I
into?
think that's where I'm landing. I love that. I was like, Robin saved me here because landing. I think that's. I believe that's where I'm landing, and I'm so glad that you brought that up. That comment is real. It keeps standing out to me. She says, "So true. Whether we acknowledge it or not, we date our fathers, good, bad, or indifferent." That is so true. But yeah, I think I'm landing there, right? And I say that to say, now I'm gonna try to speed this up. I get excited now when I talk about this part, right? Because I didn't know that's where I was gonna land at first, right? I really didn't have, and me and you talked. I didn't catch it here. I didn't catch it, right? I was too busy, so happy that I had a voice. I was so happy that I had a voice, so I didn't catch it tight at first. But God, moving me from New York City, that's a whole testimony, telling me I have to leave New York City, shift me out to Houston. 2 months, I released that book April of 2021. July of 2021, I was gone. I was in a whole new state, away from everything, really getting stripped down. Because if you read the back of my book, I think somewhere along the line, I wrote a poem saying, I'm ready to blossom, I'm ready to grow. Right? When I wrote that, I really did not know what blossoming and growing looked like for me. I just knew I was ready, right? So when he shipped me over here to Texas, God began to process me, not only with learning that he's my father, right? He shipped me here to let me see I'm your father. I'm going to take care of you. My word says when your parent or your mother and father forsake will raise you up. Like he stripped me from everything, even people that I thought was going to be part of that growth blossoming process for me. He stripped that. So where it was just me and him in this territory, in this new territory, just going in, figuring out when is this butterfly about to fly? Because right now I'm feeling like a caterpillar over here, right? So he let me to see that my story, the reconciliation of the father and daughter relationship, although I was saying it out my mouth, like I want to see father and daughter relationships, reconciled. He let me to see that that's really the marriage of my story in ministry that he's called me to, right? So he's landing that plane for me to merge the two, but I didn't see it then. I'm just seeing it as two separate things. My story, because I'm going to help, to answer your question, I'm going to help these women and these fathers, through ministry, right? Because once I was healed from that rejection from my father, in order that I'm still, you always need something to fill what you think is missing. So that's when Christ came and the Holy Spirit came. So I'm full now. I'm full of something even greater than myself, right? So helping these women and helping, daughters and fathers not only go through that raw emotion and dealing with that head on, God showed me how the ministry of now, when you introduce them to Christ, they'll be more willing to receive me. They'll be more willing to see me as their father. And I say that is landing because out here, he been using my book like evangelism tool. Like my neighbor brought like 3 books, right? I didn't witness to her daughter. I didn't witness to her granddaughter. I didn't been in there praying with them. They on the floor crying. And it all stems from daddy issues. Like, and I'm using my book and I'm like, what is happening here? Like, what is happening? Like, what is happening here? And I'm finished with them and it's like, this is what you're doing. This is what you're doing. You're showing me how to help them get through that raw emotion, because it's a real thing. Like being angry that somebody abandoned you, being angry that your father wasn't there, it's a real thing. So you can't just help them get through that and not introduce them to the real helper, right? The real remedy,
the real father.
Because they're going to need something to fill them, else they're going to wind up back in that misery again. So he's really landing that for me to let me see how it's really ministry and it's really helping them heal. Even at the book event I did in Texas, the man came to buy my book, and he was like, I don't know. I just asked him. I said, what intrigued you about this book? How is the relationship with you and your daughter? And he was like, it's not good. He's like, it's not good. You understand what I'm saying? And this is somebody that was an author. He was an author too. But he's like, it's not good. And I'm like, wow. Like, someone that you would look at and be like, oh, he's a nice black man. He got, he's here, being an author. But he admit the relationship with his daughter is not good. So then what I do is like an evangelism tool. I then start to tell my story. I then start to say, how he should show up for his daughter. Like, this is how you should show up, right? This is how you should be present. You got to acknowledge. You can't make any excuses. You got to hear that pain. You got to be patient, because it's not going to just happen. Like, so I'm able to use that as a tool to then help, the fathers too. And even this is the last part where I said this landing, right? Why is landing? Because the woman that came to my table, I shared my testimony with her. I shared my story about my father and daughter relationship. She's bawling, crying at the table because her brother is an addict, and her niece is the person that I was in that book at this present moment. So she's bawling, crying, and like, I have to buy this book for my niece because I want my brother and my niece to have a better relationship. So I'm like, this is the connection, right? Like, so, I think it's coming to me. The revelation is coming to me, but I needed to arrive there. Like how me and you, I needed to arrive there. So I think my focus is like 100 right now. Like I'm really ready to just shift. You know what I'm saying? And really hammer in on, what you just said, helping these women, these daughters and these fathers really heal, and ultimately knowing who is their father, who's their real father.
There you go. There you go. Oh my gosh. So this is so good. So tell the title of the book one more time. Let us know where the book can be purchased, all that good stuff.
Well, the title of my book again is Finding My Voice Through the Words of My Father. It can be purchased right in my Instagram link. If you go in, click on my Instagram link, you click on that, you can purchase my book right through my website. You can also purchase my book through Amazon. You can also purchase my book at Barnes & Noble, and my book is also available on Kindle. But I encourage you, before you even purchase the book, download the free ebook, right? The free ebook on forgiveness, because I believe that the free ebook, and the link is also in my Instagram bio, the free ebook of forgiveness, and that's titled Forgiveness, How to Open a Door for Love, that will prepare you to really read the book and also do the prompts in the book to help you address those issues that you have, or that pain or that abandonment that you have. So download the free ebook, see how to go through that process of forgiveness, and then ultimately purchase my book, which, not just because it's my book, but that it'll help you heal and help you deal with those father-daughter issues.
Yes. So y'all heard it here. Another author of impact, Michelle U. Brown. Michelle U. Brown. Thank you so much for sharing your heart. Thank you so much for this conversation. And so listen, y'all, we need to mend our father-daughter relationships. And even if, your father is deceased, there is still time and there's still space for you to mend that relationship as well, to mend it. And what Michelle said is key at the end. It starts with forgiveness. So make sure that you click on the link in her bio.
Can I say one quick
Make
thing?
sure Make sure you download the ebook, and most of all, make sure that you purchase the book. If not for you, purchase it for someone else who are having some issues, and even purchase it for a father, right? Because a lot of times we want to, always heal the women, but we need to heal the men too. Amen. So if you know a man that is, struggling in a certain area in reference to his daughter, he's not connecting, he might have done some things. Listen, it's okay for you to, to intervene delicately and say, listen, I purchased this book for you. maybe it'll be a help, especially if it's a family member and the dynamics of the story. So go ahead, and I said let you have your
Yeah, I
your
just want to
parting
say one quick
words.
thing because I forgot to mention this. Success, like even if we see lately in the blogs and stuff, we saw I think Latoya Luckett came forward with her father issues that she reunited with her father. I think Kelly Rowland, she also came forward that she reunited with her father. So this point that was sticking in my head was that being successful don't mean that you're over it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Being successful, being well off, or being accomplished, and whatever right that you accomplish is, doesn't even mean that it doesn't affect you or you don't have to resolve it, right?
That's
As you can
true.
see in those two ladies, they're
Yes.
millionaires, yet
Yes.
alone they still needed to sit at that table and have that reconciliation with their fathers. So don't let the success or the fact that, oh, I made it without my father, I made it, I'm good now. Don't let that get you caught up into things that you're suppressing because you think your success, you're good, so you don't need to deal with it. So that was just sticking in my head.
Yes.
But
That's
yeah, I don't have
good.
nothing else to say.
That's good. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Michelle. So y'all click on the link in her bio. Make sure you're following her because she's about to do some great things. She's
Mm-hmm.
already doing great things, but now it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and wider. And so I just, pray so many blessings on this work because it's really important and it's very much needed. So, y'all, there you have it. Michelle U. Brown, thank you so much for tuning in to Authors of Impact Live, where we talk to some amazing authors who are using their lives and their books for the greater good. And so we will be back next week with another awesome author.
Yeah.
God bless. Good night.